Why is the church tax exempt? Let me give you one example right off the bat. All right, and this is a very clear example of why churches are tax exempt. A lot of people think that the government provides food to feed the hungry. All right, and to some extent that's true. All right, and I'm speaking from experience. My wife actually runs the food ministry here at Trinity Lutheran, one of the larger food ministries, at least in the county. We have a very robust food ministry. We're open 3 days a week. We have a food truck that goes out once a month to bring food to the needy, actually in their community, as well. So I'm very familiar with how this operates, and understand that the government food. First of all, what government food there is. All right, the food pantry that we operate, for example, yes, we have federal food that comes in through the Emergency Food Assistance Program, TFAP is what it's called. And then we also have some state food through a state grant called MEFAP. But that does not provide all of the food that we give out to people. We also have a number of what we call church food, and that can be food that's actually donated by church members, or that's purchased through money that's donated by church members, or that's donated. We have a number of local grocery stores that provide food to us on a regular basis. So this is all food that's unrestricted. The government food all has restrictions on it, right? You have to meet certain financial eligibility requirements, et cetera, et cetera. The church food we can give to whoever we want to. So while the government does provide food, they act as more of a distribution center. Understand this, the government does not operate food pantries. All right, they do not actually hand the food directly over to the people who need the food. They rely on food pantries for that. All right, so the government has these warehouses where they do have volunteers come in and help sort the food and collect the donated food, and they also have some other purchased food that they purchase that you can buy from them. That's the other thing a lot of people don't realize, that a lot of the food from these food banks is also the churches have to pay for it as well. But then that food then gets delivered to the food pantry, and the food pantry, through its volunteers, actually distributes that food directly to the people in need. Guess who runs the overwhelming majority of food pantries in the United States? Faith-based organizations, churches, specifically the Christian church. All right? And so part of the reason churches are tax exempt is because they are taking a burden upon themselves that would otherwise fall to the government. All right. If the churches did not operate these food pantries, then the government would have to take on that responsibility. And I've got news for you. The government's not doing it on a volunteer basis like the churches are. They're going to have to, first of all, buy facilities for actual distribution centers. All right. They're going to have to pay employees to actually run these things. All right. And they're going to have to pay employee benefits and all that kind of stuff on top of it. Whereas churches already have the facilities. They're using their existing facilities. Or in our case, we actually built a separate building for this. Churches get to it on a volunteer basis. We have people from the church, members of the church in the community, that come in and do it for free. Now, we do have one paid employee that runs the food ministry, my wife. Other than that, otherwise, everybody else that handles it is all volunteers. So churches are able to do this at a far lower cost than what the government would be able to do it for. However, the reason churches are able to do it is partially because they don't have to pay income tax. If you make them pay income tax, then that is an additional expense that the church now has to budget for, has to make money for, which has a dual effect. Number one, that's more money that they need to put out that they could otherwise be putting towards these ministries, like this food ministry. And number two, by making them tax exempt, it gives an incentive for people to donate to these ministries. All right. So, whereas if you take that tax exemption away, now all of a sudden people might not be as likely to donate. So, if you take the tax exemption away from churches, you're hitting them on both sides. You're increasing their expenses, and you're also decreasing their revenue. And if you do that, guess what the result is going to be? Not as many churches are going to be able to afford to do these food pantries. In which case, the government needs to pick up the slack, and now the government needs to run the food pantries. And guess what that means? More taxes to you. Okay, now your taxes go up because the government needs to create the revenue they need in order to buy these distribution centers, or rent the distribution centers, and to pay employees and benefits and all of that. So you may not like churches, okay? And you may not like God. You may not believe in Christianity, whatever. That's fine. But there's one thing you should be very grateful for, and that's churches are making it so you pay fewer taxes. All right? That's the short answer for why are churches tax exempt. Because they provide services that otherwise would fall to the government. And so the government incentivizes them doing this by making it so they have lower expenses on their end by not having to pay taxes, and they get increased revenue by providing the tax break to those who donate to them. That's why. That's the justification.